Good day, everyone. So today we're going to talk about the human body and orientation. So let's have a short overview of anatomy and physiology and their word etymology. So anatomy comes from the Greek word which means ana or a part and tomy which means to cut. So basically, anatomy is the study of the structure and shape of the body and how they relate to one another. You can study anatomy in multiple ways. One of these ways is through gross anatomy and also microscopic anatomy. So when you say gross anatomy, that is studying your body parts through the naked eye. So when you look at the body and study it piece by piece, for example, organ per organ, and you're only observing the large structures, that's what you call gross anatomy. Meanwhile, microscopic anatomy is studying the same body structures under a microscope. So you're actually studying the tiny cells and tissues that cannot be seen normally by the naked eye. Okay, so aside from anatomy, we have physiology. So physiology comes from the etymology physio, which means nature, and logy, which means the study of. So this means that physiology is your study of how your body works or what is the nature of your body, how it functions as it works alongside the other organs. So it has different subdivisions as well. So the subdivisions are basically determined by the different body systems, no? So the physiology of the nervous system is called neurophysiology, while the cardiovascular system, its physiology is called the cardiac physiology, so on and so forth. Next, we will move on to the levels of structural organization. So the human body, it can be observed through different levels of complexity, from the simplest structure all the way to the most complex form. Okay, so here are the different levels of structural organization. You have first the simplest form, your chemical, then we move on to cellular, and then tissue, organ system, and then organism. So we'll go through this one by one. The chemical level is the simplest level of structural organization. So under the chemical level, you have the atoms and the molecules. So what's the difference between the two? Atoms are also known as the basic building blocks of matter. Okay? So these are the very small particles. They're very small particles as seen here. It is the one that's composed of your protons and neutrons clumped together with its electrons that swirl around to form a singular atom. So when these atoms combine, they form what you call molecules. Okay, so molecules are particles of a substance that contains all the physical and chemical properties of a substance. Example, you have your water, sugar, and your proteins. And these molecules, when they combine or work together in a specific way, they are the ones that comprise your cells. And cells are the next level of structural organization. Okay, so as you see here, the difference between an atom and a molecule. So atom is a singular building block composed of the proton, the neutron together in a nucleus and surrounded by its electrons. Meanwhile, the molecule is a combination of different atoms, okay, to form a singular molecule. So next level of structural organization is your cellular level. So cells are the smallest unit of living things. And all these cells have some common structure and function. Certain cells have their own individual function. They have their own individual size, shape, and their own role in the body. So organisms made up of cells can either be unicellular or multicellular. Unicellular organisms are the simplest living creatures composed of only one cell. Okay, so there are organisms that are only comprised of one singular cell. Examples of that are your bacteria, they're only just one cell. Protozoa, which is a type of parasite, and your yeast. Okay, they're only composed of a single cell. Multicellular organisms mean they are composed of numerous or multiple cells. That's why it gets its name, multicellular. So these are your animals that you're familiar with and also humans. We are multicellular organisms. So as seen here, no? These are your unicellular organisms. You have an example of a bacteria, your Escherichia coli or your E. coli. Okay, so that thing here is a singular cell. And this one is an Entamoeba histolytica. This is your amoeba parasite. This is an example of a protozoa. So this thing here is your amoeba, and that's just one cell on its own. And then you have your Candida albicans or your yeast. Okay, an example of a yeast. And each cell is this one, this circle right here. Okay, and also these long ones, different stages in the life of a yeast. So each one is a singular yeast. So as a throwback, no, you have two types of cells. Okay, first you have the prokaryotic cell and the eukaryotic cell. The difference between the two is that eukaryotic cells in here in the bottom, these are cells that have what you call a true nucleus. True nucleus meaning it has a small container for its genetic material that is separate from the rest of the organelles inside its cell. Meanwhile, a prokaryotic cell does not contain a true nucleus. Okay? It does not have a container for its genetic material. What your prokaryotic cell has, however, is a nucleoid. Okay, a nucleoid. Nucleoid meaning nucleus-like. The nucleoid is irregularly shaped region inside the cell which contains all of its genetic material. Okay, so it's just swimming inside that cell. It's not contained in its own small bubble or its own small pocket. Animal cells, including us, we contain eukaryotic cells. Okay? We are composed of eukaryotic cells. So what about prokaryotic cells? Examples of prokaryotic organisms are your bacteria. Okay, your bacteria. Next, we have your tissue level. Okay? So tissue consists of groups of similar cells that have a common function. There are only 4 basic types of tissues, okay? Your tissues can be classified for 4 types. You have it here. You have your connective tissue, which its main function is to connect and protect the other tissue types. That's the function of the connective tissue. Next, the epithelial tissue. The epithelial tissue's main function is to protect and line the different organs of our body. Okay, next, muscle tissue. Its main function is to contract, to provide movement. And then lastly, your nervous tissue. Its main function is to send impulses. Its function is to communicate with other cells. So when these different types of tissues combine and work together, they create what you call an organ. Okay, an organ is a structure made up of 2 or more tissues. And its goal is to perform a specific function of the body. So with the help of different organs, no? Different organs combine to form what you call an organ system. Okay? An organ system is a group of organs that work together to accomplish a common purpose. Example is the cardiovascular system. It is composed of mainly your heart and your blood vessels, and they circulate blood continuously in order to bring nutrients and oxygen to the other body cells. And next you have the organismal layer rather, the organismal layer. So this represents the highest level of structural organization. It is the total or the sum total of all the structural levels working together to keep one being alive. Okay, the different beings can be animals, humans, so on and so forth. Next, we talk about the necessary life functions. So our body, in order to maintain life, they need to perform certain functions, okay? To keep the living organism healthy and working. One of its main life functions is maintaining boundaries, okay? Our cells and the human body itself has its own boundaries to maintain. It ensures what is inside to remain distinct or separate from what should be outside. Examples of boundaries that are found in our body is from the cells itself. Okay, the cells have their own boundary. You have what you call a plasma membrane. Okay, this cell membrane that covers an entire cell. This membrane keeps the internal environment of your cell as is. Okay, it protects it from the environment from the outside. Okay, it is also, you call it selective. Okay, it selects any materials from the outside and chooses what it should bring on the inside. Example, nutrients and oxygen, while it keeps dangerous things away from the inside of the cell. That's the function of the plasma membrane, one of its functions. Okay, another type of boundary that we're familiar with is our skin. Okay, our skin or our integumentary system. It helps protect us from different elements from the outside world. Okay, too much sunlight, okay, too much water, moisture, okay, from drying out. It prevents us from drying out by producing sweat and all the other dangerous microorganisms or even dangerous elements such as fire, okay, protects us from being damaged. That's the function of the skin, okay? And these boundaries helps us stay alive, okay? It keeps everything safe inside its own container. Okay, so another life function is movement. Okay, so this is brought about by your muscles. Okay, example, your skeletal muscles. It helps propel or move ourselves from one place to another. Okay, and it also helps manipulate the external environment. Okay, with our different body parts. For example, our fingers, our arms, so on and so forth, to help bring more nutrients to us. Okay, when we eat, okay, we cannot eat if we don't have our muscles. Okay? Example of other muscles are the smooth and cardiac muscles. Okay? So our smooth muscles and cardiac muscles help propel or move substances such as our blood, food, and urine, okay, throughout our internal organs. So next, life function is responsiveness or irritability. So it is basically the ability of our body to sense changes around the environment. You call those changes stimuli. And then once we detect those stimuli, our body responds or reacts to them accordingly. Okay, example, when we hold a very hot object, our instant response, if it's too hot, we let go. Okay, that's an example of irritability or responsiveness. Okay, so the nervous system bears the major responsibility for responsiveness. So our nerve cells are highly irritable. So they respond to stimuli very quickly compared to other cells. So they are the ones responsible for communicating these stimuli to the brain and react accordingly. Okay? It helps us react to any dangers. Okay? That's how our body works. Okay, the function of responsiveness is to react, to help prevent us from getting into dangerous situations. Next is digestion. So digestion is basically the process of breaking down ingested food into smaller molecules and then absorb them to the blood, as seen here in the picture. So we eat and then our body breaks down these food particles into simpler nutrients, okay? And then all these nutrients are absorbed into the blood and then the blood carries them to our different organs and use them as energy source. Next is metabolism. So metabolism refers to the basically the sum chemical reactions, the sum total of all the chemical reactions that occur in our body. So examples of metabolic reactions, you call these metabolic reactions. Examples of this is breaking down complex substances into simpler or easier building blocks or is easier molecules. Okay, this is the description of digestion. Okay, digestion is a form of metabolism. Another form of metabolism is creating. Okay, creating larger structures from smaller ones. Okay, the opposite of digestion. And then you have the utilization of nutrients to produce ATP. And ATP is the energy source of the body. Next is excretion. So excretion is the process of removing waste from the body. So the main organ systems responsible for excretion are your number one, digestive system. Okay, it excretes your indigestible food residues in the form of your feces. Next is urinary system. It excretes or it disposes the nitrogen-containing waste in the form of urine. Okay? And lastly, you have skin. It produces or it excretes sweat. Okay? So sweat's function is to release not only waste but also release body temperature when our body is too heated. Okay? Next, you have reproduction. So reproduction is the production of offspring, okay? But reproduction doesn't just mean you create a new human being. Reproduction can also occur from the cellular level of organization, okay? Our cells continuously divide and reproduce actually in order for growth and also replacement of dead cells when a body part is needing repair, okay? So example, when we get samad, no? When we get injured, our cells try to repair that injury by reproducing, by dividing its own cells to cover up or plug up the injury. Okay? So you call that function cellular reproduction. Okay? The original cells will divide to create two identical daughter cells, and that can be used for body growth or repair. And then there's also the reproduction in the organism level. Okay? The ones that we are more familiar with. The products of the reproductive system, the sperm and egg will combine to produce a offspring. So this reproductive system is regulated by hormones of the endocrine system. Next is our growth. Okay, growth from a tiny baby to a full-fledged adult. So growth is described by an increase in cell size or an increase in body size accomplished by an increase in the number of cells. Okay? So there are multiple hormones that play a role in directing growth. One such example of a hormone responsible for growth is the growth hormone, seen here in the picture. Okay? Produced by the pituitary gland. Okay? It is the one that helps control the growth of different body cells. So in order for our body to maintain life, it not only needs different necessary life functions no, that we discussed, but it also needs different survival needs or different ingredients taken from the outside world in order to power up the body. Okay? It needs different elements taken from outside to help the body perform properly in order for the body to create or make the functional life processes possible. So what are the different survival needs? Number one is nutrients. So nutrients can be obtained from food. Okay? So food contains the chemicals that are used for energy and cell building. Examples of food sources or energy sources is number one, carbohydrates or familiar are carbs. Okay? Our rice, bread, vegetables, okay, they are the source of your carbohydrates. And carbohydrates are the major energy source. It's the main fuel needed by our cells. Other sources of nutrients are protein, okay, taken from mga meats, chicken, beef, fish, okay, they're essential for building cellular structures. And then you also have your fat, okay. Fats also build cell structures and it helps cushion the body organs and is a reserve fuel. Other sources of nutrients are minerals and vitamins. Okay, so these minerals and vitamins are required for the different chemical reactions. And also it helps in oxygen transport in the blood. Okay, next survival needs is oxygen. Okay, so oxygen is required for chemical reactions that release energy from food. And it is made available to the blood and body cells by our cardiovascular system. So oxygen travels or is delivered to the different cells with the help of your cardiovascular system. Okay, blood carries oxygen to your different body parts. Other survival need is water. So 60 to 80% of body weight is actually composed of water. And water is the single most abundant chemical substance in the body, and it provides the fluid base for body secretions and excretions. So most of our water is obtained from food and liquid, and our body loses water from evaporation or from breathing through our lungs and from sweat and other body excreta such as urine and feces. So next survival need is normal body temperature. The normal body temperature is 37 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the core body temperature. If you look at the picture, it's the one in red. Okay? That's the core body temperature, 37 degrees Celsius. If in Fahrenheit, it's 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so any fluctuation in the core body temperature will result in an imbalance. Okay? If the body temp is too low, our metabolic reactions will slow down until it reaches to a stop. Okay? Remember when kanang hypothermia, okay, it can cause death. If the body temp is too low, the different reactions in our body will cease from working. Okay? And in comparison, if our body temp is too high, as seen in mga fever, no? The chemical reactions or the metabolic reactions will become too fast. Okay? They will work too rapidly. And as a result, it can lead to different breaking down of body components such as our body proteins. That's why when a fever is too long, it can be dangerous because you can basically cook yourselves. Okay? Okay, not just in fever, but if something is placed in a fire, they get cooked, okay? So their body components are broken down because of the high temperature. Okay? So extreme temperatures lead to death. Okay? So most body heat is generated by the activity of our skeletal muscles, okay? And this body heat dissipates or it transfers to the blood circulating close to our skin, okay? So the blood carries all of that heat and travels all the way to different body parts, okay? To maintain a normal body temperature. Okay, so next survival need is atmospheric pressure. So atmospheric pressure is basically the force exerted on the surface of our body thanks to the weight of the air. Okay, so our breathing, okay, the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide depends on the atmospheric pressure surrounding us. Okay, so compare it to areas of high altitude and low altitude. Kanang mga nasa bundok, you call that areas of high altitude. Okay? Areas in high altitude have lower atmospheric pressure. The air there is, you describe it as very thin. Okay? Because there is low atmospheric pressure, there is less air exerted against the body. So there is less air for breathing. Okay? Less air for gas exchange. Okay, so because there is less air, we're getting less oxygen. So our cellular metabolism can slow down. Okay, compare it when we are in areas in low altitudes or areas with high atmospheric pressure. Okay, so there is more oxygen, there is more air surrounding us, so there is more gas exchange taking place in areas of high pressure. Okay, so our last topic is homeostasis. Okay, so this might be a new term for you. So homeostasis comes from the etymology homeo, meaning the same, and stasis, meaning standing still. So homeostasis can seem like kung ano, it literally means unchanging. Okay, the term means unchanging. However, when put into context of the human body, our anatomy and physiology, homeostasis does not mean that our body is just in a stable or unchanging state. Okay, it doesn't mean that our body is unchanging. Homeostasis means it's our ability to maintain a stable internal environment despite the different changes that occur surrounding it. Okay? So homeostasis is a what you call a self-regulating process. It's a self-adjusting process which an organism uses in order to maintain stability. Okay? To maintain stability and adjust to different conditions in the environment. Okay? Do you understand? So it's an equilibrium. You call it an equilibrium or a balance. Okay? It's a dynamic state of balance. So our body continuously changes inside in order to adapt and adjust to the different changes in the environment in order to maintain life, to maintain a good balance. So it can be visualized properly by the seesaw, no? The seesaw is what you call, you can see the seesaw as the state of balance, okay? So any change that occurs on this seesaw, the body will try to adjust to it in order to lift the seesaw back into balance. Okay, so any imbalance, if it gets too high or there's a change that makes the balance too low, the body tries to adjust to come back to its balanced state. Okay, that's a good example of a visual example of homeostasis. So basically, every body organ system plays a role in maintaining homeostasis. Okay? So the body demonstrates homeostasis through various means. One example is maintaining an adequate amount of blood or an adequate amount of blood level in order to carry the proper amount of nutrients. Another one is the propelling of blood. Okay, the movement of blood should be adequate enough to reach all body tissues. Okay, another form of homeostasis is excreting waste. Okay, so waste should not accumulate in our body. That's why the body has the excretory system, the different excretory organs. Next one, the control of body temperature. So proper body temperature should be controlled by our body to maintain homeostasis. And then communication within the body. So it's one of the most important ways of maintaining homeostasis. The body needs to communicate with one another. So there are different components of the homeostatic control system. There are three main components. You have the receptor. The receptor is the one that responds to different changes or stimuli. Okay? It responds to the stimuli and then it sends that information to the control center. Okay? The information that flows from the receptor to the control center flows through what you call an afferent pathway. Okay, afferent pathway. And then you have the control center. Once that stimuli reaches the control center, it analyzes that information and determines the appropriate response or the appropriate course of action. And then you have the effector. The effector provides the means for the control center to respond to the stimuli. Okay, so the information that flows from the control center to the effector flows along what you call an efferent pathway. Okay, an efferent pathway. So in order for us to remember different afferent and efferent. So afferent pathway meaning the information approaches. Okay, approaches the control center. Okay, afferent. A for approaching, A for afferent. Okay, so efferent meaning it exits the control center. The efferent pathway delivers information that exits the control center. So E, exit, E for efferent. Okay. So here you have the three components of the homeostatic control system with its pathways. Okay. So receptor, afferent pathway to the control center. It creates a response. The response is delivered by the efferent pathway to the effector. Okay. So you have those three components, but there are 5 elements to the homeostatic control system. You have 3 components and 5 elements. What are the 5 elements of the homeostatic control system? You have the stimuli. Okay? The stimuli, it is the source or the change from the outside world. And then the stimuli is detected by the receptor, number 2, the second element. The stimuli is detected by the receptor and brings the information to the control center. The information is known as an input. Okay? The information going to the control center is termed the input. And this input travels through the afferent pathway. Once the information reaches the control center, it creates a response. That response is called an output. The output travels along the efferent pathway all the way to its effector to create a response. Okay, those are the elements of a full homeostatic control system. So in order to maintain homeostasis, the body responds to the stimuli in either a negative way or a positive way. You have what you call the negative feedback mechanism, wherein the net effect of the response from our stimuli is to either shut off the stimuli or to reduce the intensity of the stimuli. So you call that a negative feedback mechanism in order to maintain homeostasis. It tries to reduce or stop the original stimuli to maintain homeostasis. An example of that would be body temperature. When there is any change occurring outside and it causes a change in the body temperature, our body will react negatively to it. Okay, so the opposite will happen in order to maintain the normal body temperature. Another one is when you try to regulate the heart rate, regulate blood pressure, regulating breathing. When there is a change in heart rate, when there's a change in blood pressure, change in breathing, our body reacts the opposite way in order to control or maintain that heart rate, that blood pressure, that breathing rate. So the negative feedback mechanism also applies in our hormones, in blood sugar levels, and also oxygen, carbon dioxide, and minerals. Okay, so I'll show you an example of how the negative feedback mechanism works in body temperature here. Okay, let's start with the square. So as I said, normal human body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius. Example, there's a change in this body temperature. Our body temperature rises. Maybe it's too hot. Okay, our body is here in the Philippines, it's too hot. So our brain, actually, our nervous system notices this change in the body temperature. And our brain sends messages. It sends messages to our sweat glands and blood vessels and respond to this high body temperature. Our blood vessels will vasodilate or it increases in diameter and our body begins to sweat. Okay? Vasodilation occurs in order to bring more heat to the surface area, more heat to the skin in order to release all that extra body heat. Okay? So our body also begins to sweat because sweat also helps in releasing heat. So the sweating combined with the vasodilation will release more heat and help cool down our body. Okay? Once our body starts to cool down from all the released excess heat, our body returns to its 37 degrees Celsius. Okay? It returns to homeostasis. Okay, it returns to its balance. Okay, that's how the negative feedback mechanism works. It tries to stop the original stimuli or makes it less intense. Okay, it tries to normalize it. Okay, the opposite will happen. Tumataas siya, as a response, bababa siya. When our body temp is too cold, the brain also detects that. The brain also detects that drop in body temperature. And as it responds, the blood vessels will, rather than vasodilate, it will start to vasoconstrict. You call it vasoconstrict, meaning mas magamay ang width of the blood vessel. So less blood will travel there, less heat will travel through our blood vessels. Okay, and their body will start to shiver. Okay, the sweat glands will stop producing sweat and our body will begin to shiver to generate more heat. Okay, in order to increase the body temperature in our core. Okay, gets negative response. So the stimuli is a drop in temperature. Our body reacts in the opposite way to increase the body temperature in order to maintain that homeostasis. Okay, that's negative feedback mechanism. And then there's also positive feedback mechanism. So its net effect or its net result is it increases the actual stimuli. It increases the actual stimuli and push that change further. It promotes that change. Okay, it encourages that change to continue. This is actually a very rare kind of mechanism. Okay, common mechanisms in the body are negative. Examples of these rare occurrences are blood clotting and in labor. Okay, when the mother tries to push out the baby, a positive feedback mechanism occurs. Okay, so to show that, you have it here on our left, no? On the right is, again, the example of the negative feedback mechanism. And then on the left is a positive feedback mechanism during childbirth or labor. So when it's time for the baby to come out, the baby will push against the cervix, okay? The head of the baby will push against the cervix, and that pushing or that pressure on the cervix will be transmitted to the brain, okay? The brain will find out the baby's already ready to come out. The brain will stimulate our endocrine glands, our pituitary glands, to release the hormone oxytocin, okay? Oxytocin helps in contracting the uterus. Okay, that's one function of oxytocin. The hormone oxytocin helps contract the uterus. So it pushes this uterus. Okay, it contracts, it pushes to help the baby push out. And as the baby keeps pushing out, the head will again continue to hit the cervix. And that pressure on the cervix will be detected by the brain. Brain makes more oxytocin. The oxytocin continues to contract the uterus to help push the baby out. Okay? So it's just a continuous mechanism. Okay? A continuous mechanism to produce more of that stimuli. That's why you call it a positive feedback. You can term it a positive reinforcement. Okay? Like it's trying to create more of what the stimuli is producing. So that occurs there, and in contrast to the negative feedback mechanism where it tries to stop or it tries to regulate the stimuli. So that's the main difference between the two. Okay, thank you for listening.